Well, I mean, the book is a sweeping history of the rise of the dollar after World War II, all the competitors, how hard it is to live with, crypto, and many other things. And by the way, I hope I've made it entertaining enough that people will get through it. But certainly, debt is a big piece of it if we think of the future.
Right.
And Tom, you've had all kinds of people on the program. I remember you had Olivier Blanchard and Larry Summers and many others who were convinced that the interest rates were, for a long time, were just going to keep declining forever. So debt is a free lunch. That was Olivier's American Economic Association presidential address in 2019. It's a great piece of work, but I'm not sure it's a good prediction. I've been arguing for a very long time that their real interest rates, I'm talking about the 10-year rate, not the Fed funds rate,
Right.
that real interest rates have some convergence to mean, reversion to mean. What do you know? And that's happened. That's what the panic about the debt is. Now, it always was going to happen. So I think people had their head in the sand to think that we
Right.
were safe from that. Maybe AI will save us, but I don't think so. That's why the debt's piling up. Our interest bill has more than doubled. It's about to triple, and it's more than our defense budget now. So yes, that is, and that and the deficit. And by the way, I'm just amazed at how few people really understand deficit and debt aren't the same thing. I mean, I know most of your listeners do, but you'd be so surprised.
Right.
But obviously the deficit's how much you're spending, and the debt's what your credit card bill's gotten to. And I think the problem with the United States is not Trump, and it's not Biden, it's not the right, it's not the left, it's the American people right now just don't believe in any need for reining things in. And until we have, I think, another inflation crisis or some kind of crisis,
Hmm.
I don't think anybody's going to be able to achieve that.
Kenneth Rogoff with us, an extended conversation. Yale University Press called me up.
Yep.
DiCaprio is playing Rogoff in the movie coming out in 2027. I need to sell the book. Folks, it's wonderfully brief, but very deep. And it's wonderfully, wonderfully accessible. This is the book you throw at your bratty college kid this summer and say, shut up and read it. He opens, and this goes back to Rochester, New York, when he and I used to go up to House of Guitars years ago. He opens with the economist Grace Slick and
Yes.
Jefferson Airplane in Sarajevo. This book is accessible when you got Jefferson Airplane in the first key pages. Paul Sweeney.
Professor, I think most of our listeners, most of our viewers over the last several months have kind of brushed up on their knowledge of tariffs here. We've all tried to figure out what it all means. How do you present the concept of tariffs to your students?
Well, I mean, I think when we teach tariffs, we're not necessarily teaching crazy, wild tariffs going all over the place. We teach, suppose country A puts a 5% tariff on, and country B retaliates by putting a 5% tariff. And frankly, if that had been all along what was going on, it's a tax. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's well conceived. But, it wouldn't be the end of the world. We can cut other taxes. What has been, so destabilizing to markets was this idea tariffs could be used to solve every problem. I just came back from the UK. I don't know if you followed this, that Trump wanted the British to have more free speech as part of his condition for releasing tariffs and things like that all over the world. And, I think one of the things that's probably cheered markets up is I think one of Trump's better qualities is he is a pragmatist. And when something doesn't work, he finds a way to back out. And I think everyone sees that's what's going on. You played some clips of him from Qatar recently, him using the word beautiful constantly. Tariffs were beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful thing. No, it's not. It was a disaster. It was probably the worst policy in my 5 decades as an economist. But, even though he won't admit that it was so dumb, he's retreated, which is smart. And so I think that's probably why the markets are cheered up.
The markets are cheered up, Professor. We've seen the stock market erase most of the losses here. We're now flat for the year, but we haven't seen that in the dollar. The dollar's really taken a pound here, a pounding here. How do you feel about the U.S. dollar here?
Well, it's up a shade in the last
Yep.
few
Yep.
days, I think. I think the dollar's way overvalued. So, not for the reasons the administration's saying, it's just very high. It's not high because the dollar's a reserve currency, the Mar-a-Lago plan. The dollar's been very low, and the dollar's been a reserve currency, throughout this. The dollar goes in roller coaster waves. It's on a super high. I would have to go back to 2002 and before that to 1985 to see anything like it. And what do I mean by high? I mean, looking at the purchasing power of the dollar. So very simplistically, think of yourself as a Japanese tourist in the United States or an American tourist in Japan. You're going to have very different experiences right now than you might have, even 10 years ago. So Japan's had almost no inflation. We've had buckets of inflation, making prices high, and yet, the dollar's gone way up against the yen, and the euro has had a bit of inflation, but less than us.
Right.
And again, the dollar's gone up against the euro. It's very hard to predict exchange rates. If I go back to my long career, more than 40 years ago, my first really well-known paper was about how hard it was to understand, much less predict, exchange rates. However, over the years, an exception to that has become clear. When something's way out of line, the yen right now is really low, the dollar's really high. Over a couple of years, it's going to come down. So I think, Trump may take credit for it. I wrote a piece about this a year ago. I said that it doesn't matter who's president, gravity is going to bring the dollar down.
Ken Rogoff with his folks who celebrate my economic book of the summer on YouTube. Take a look, bright green cover, Our Dollar, Your Problem, Kenneth Rogoff, hugely accessible. For those of you on Bloomberg Radio, it's just simple. It's very, very readable. And I want to go to one of the chapters where there's a bit of heavy lifting. Ken Rogoff, you go back to Valéry Giscard d'Estaing of France, who gave us the phrase exorbitant privilege. Barry Eichengreen has written about it, many other worthies as well. Are we losing our exorbitant privilege? Are we losing the American advantage we've had for decades?
Well, I think it peaked about a decade ago by my reckoning. The footprint of the dollar by some measures has risen, but I think by really some key ones, in particular, the one I look at is how foreign central banks regulate their economies and their currencies against the dollar. I think it was in decline. And my book argues at the end of it, it's not the whole book, but my book argues at the end of it that in addition to the fact that China needs to break free, that's just happening, and Asia is half the dollar block, so that lowers our footprint. The fact the Europeans also hate it, and if they hadn't screwed up by bringing Greece into the the Euro system way prematurely, the Euro might be doing better today. And
Right.
that's all back on track. But I think the biggest problems are from within, which is that our deficits are out of control, and I don't think we're bringing them under control. And I also feel Federal Reserve independence from both the left and the right is under assault. Tom, I want to go back. I'm so glad you noticed Grace Slick, by the way.
Yeah.
I bring it in early to show how much other countries love the United States, and yet they hate the United States. And I'll mention, I was 17 years old, I think, when I was in a bar in Sarajevo. People are singing to the Jefferson Airplane, and I was completely oblivious because I just was so close-minded that someone who's become my best friend in chess was actually giving chess lessons to Grace Slick.
Professor, I think most of our listeners and viewers grew up at a time where globalization was the backdrop for economic growth.
Thank you for bringing this up.
Where is globalization over? I can't think of a world where we're not just thinking on a global basis. about global economics, global politics, global defense?
Well, we're definitely in a different era than we were. I mean, it had been changing before Donald Trump. So actually, economists refer to the period up to the financial crisis, 2008 to 2009, as the period of hyperglobalization. And then it really did slow down a lot. Trade growth slowed down, other measures. And you sometimes maybe you've heard the expression slowbalization. And now we're definitely in retreat, introducing the tariffs, the war in the Ukraine, the great cyber wall of China that's going up. And I think that has dramatic effects for the global economy, for interest rates, for inflation. It's a big thing. I had a paper at Brookings just over a year ago of a couple papers with some very talented young co-authors, Hassan Afrouzi, Marina Hollick, and Pierre Yared. They joke that they don't think they're
Right.
young because the two of them are in the mid-40s, but I think they're young. And Pierre's on Trump's Council of Economic Advisors now, by the way. And we argued that this period where it was easy sledding for the central banks because globalization made it easier to deliver good outcomes, it's over, and they're in a tougher period.
Ken, I want to get this in. I think it's too important as we wait for Michael Barr. And then there's Kenneth Rogoff. One of the great moments of my act was you and Joe Stiglitz together in Davos. I thought it was a miracle to get you two warring over the years in a collegial way. Joe Stiglitz changed the dialogue as you did with This Time is Different with our discontent over globalization. Ken Rogoff, what does our next globalization look like?
I mean, I think we're going to go through a period where we're breaking up more. Donald Trump initiated it. The Chinese were doing a lot. So I think we're in a period of retreat. I mean, it's very political. It's hard to know. I think it'll unfold slowly. The Princeton economic historian Harold James actually wrote a book, I think around 2010, noting that globalization goes in waves. It goes up, it goes down. Just because it's booming, we've had periods where that's happened before. And this kind of populist discontent, it's normal. And you get a retreat. I think the long term is more, but over the next couple of decades, maybe not.